We're back for yet another week of MLB DFS, and we're kicking things off on a very interesting note because when you look at tonight's slate for MLB DFS, you're going to see a lack of firepower at pitcher. You do have guys like Patrick Corbin, Lance McCullers, and some names who we generally view as being good pitchers for DFS. But for one reason or another, there may be questions around these guys. We have Coors Field in the equation with the winds blowing out, so there are a lot of different things tugging at us as we try to make decisions for tonight's slate. So that's going to require a little bit of an extra deep dive for today to dig in, see if we can palette some of those, true high firepower pitchers, or if we should go a different route, maybe spend down a bit of pitcher and try to find players who can emerge from that pack and put up a big score. So a tough slate, but it could be a fun one as well. Welcome on into the solo shot. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, here to break down tonight's 8-game main slate. Lock is set for 7:10, so 5 extra minutes to destroy your lineups before lock, which is always a delight and something I have never definitely done in the past. Weather notes for tonight: the winds are blowing in from right field at 11 miles per hour in Detroit for the Tigers and the White Sox. I don't think you do need to abandon hitters there because it is still 87 degrees, so good hitting weather, but the wind does negate that heat at least a tiny bit. Winds are blowing out to center at 11 miles per hour at Coors Field. It's also 87 degrees, so bats are absolutely delicious for the Rockies and the Diamondbacks, and you can bet we'll be talking about that game in the stacking section for today. Finally, winds are blowing out in Texas for the Rangers and the Mariners, but it's also 96 degrees. They'll probably shut the roof there, which is a bit of a downgrade for hitters. So for both the Texas and the Houston games, make sure you are disregarding weather because I'm assuming that the roofs will be shut there. Just kind of still in that adjustment period, specifically with Texas, to adjusting the fact they have a retractable roof, and we have to make sure we account for that when making decisions, and it'll help us with a pitcher as well. We'll talk about that in just one second, but first, Major League Baseball is officially back, and so is FanDuel's Home Run Challenge. Every day, you will be able to draft any 3 hitters on the slate where only home runs count. If your lineup scores 3+ home runs in the contest, you will win a share of $2,000 in cash. If your lineup scores 6+ home runs, you'll earn an additional share of a $10,000 bonus cash. It is a great way to make your night that much more interesting, but don't just take my word for it. Head to FanDuel and play for free today. For more details, visit FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel app. Eligibility restrictions apply. Pitching preview for this Monday main slate: Patrick Corbin is the highest salaried pitcher on the slate. He checks in at $10,800 over on FanDuel. Kyle Gibson is second up, but he's all the way down to $8,700. Lance McCullers, mentioned it before, $8,400. Adrian Hauser rounds at the top group at $8,000. And as you can hear there, some interesting dilemmas at pitcher because there is a lot of incentive to spend down for today. And we'll discuss 2 lower salaried options in just one second. But I do want to talk about Patrick Corbin first because from an overall talent perspective, Corbin is the best pitcher on this slate. Corbin went 102 pitches his last time out, which means that he is fully stretched out, which again is not always the case at this point in the year. And with Corbin, the velocity has been down in his first 2 starts. Sometimes we can view that as being a negative because velocity does matter a lot. But it hasn't impacted the effectiveness of Corbin, and we've seen his velocity be down in the past, and he's been able to pitch through it. He has a 34% strikeout rate in those 2 starts with a 2% walk rate. His swing and strike rate is just kind of okay at 11.9%, but one of those starts was against the Yankees. They're not a high strikeout team. Now, Corbin is facing the Mets again for the second consecutive time. His swing and strike rate was 10.8% in the first one. Now, he has to face them again, this time being on the road. Corbin has slowly been upping his four-seam fastball usage, something he started last year. And over his past 8 starts with those more four-seamers, he has a 3.69 skill interactive ERA with a 31% strikeout rate. So this Mets team is a good team, but from a pure talent perspective, Corbin is in a tier of his own for pitchers for tonight. Given that this is a repeat matchup, though, and given that the Mets are good, Corbin is not my favorite pitcher for this specific slate. He is, however, in my top 3, which is why I decided to discuss him here. He is the most expensive guy. Makes sense to start there. He is in my top 3. He is probably number 3, specifically on that list. And if I had just one lineup, I would not go Corbin. But if we're multi-entering for tonight, I think that Corbin deserves to be in that rotation of guys that you use. He is 10-8, but there is some value on tonight's slate. There is a value stack you can use. So Patrick Corbin, despite not being my favorite pitcher for tonight, all things considered, still someone who does belong in our rotation if you're multi-entering for tournaments. Now, our two other pitchers are going to be riskier individual options, but they are both at home, and they're both in really good matchups. The one I'd actually prefer, just by a hair, is Kyle Gibson, which probably sounds weird, but Gibson is $8,700, again, the second highest salaried pitcher on the slate. And I mentioned that he is at home in a good matchup. His specific matchup was with the Mariners. They have an 88 WRC plus against righties since the start of last year, based on their current active roster, with a 26% strikeout rate. That is a really high strikeout rate. And Gibson is also, like Corbin, stretched out. He has gone 93 and 103 pitches in his first two starts. He's looked really good in those two starts as well. He has a 28% strikeout rate, and he's still getting ground balls. Those are all the good things working in Kyle Gibson's favor, and the reason that he might wind up being my number one pitcher for tonight. There are still some downsides, though, and I think they are worth mentioning. His swinging strike rate is 9.2%. That means that at that 28% strikeout rate is very unlikely to stick where it is currently at. But at the same time, he got that 9.2% swinging strike rate against two middling or lower strikeout teams. They were the A's and the Diamondbacks. Now he's at home. He is facing a higher strikeout team. He is on a full pitch count. So, yeah, Kyle Gibson's probably not a guy we would turn to on a regular slate. Like if we have legitimate top-end pitchers available, Kyle Gibson probably does not make the cut. But we don't have a lot of high upside pitchers here, so I think Gibson does fit in this scenario. I think the safety is pretty good. I feel decent about him, and I'm willing to go here. So I think with all things considered, Kyle Gibson is probably going to wind up being my number one pitcher for tonight. It is frightening. I don't feel great about it, but I think on this specific slate, it does dictate that we go there. The other guy I'd want to consider is Dustin May, and he's similar in a lot of ways to Gibson. He is at home. He has a plus matchup. He's had a lot of strikeouts this year without a ton of whiffs. So they actually check very similar boxes. The matchup from a strikeout perspective is great. He's facing the Padres, and the offense for San Diego has been really good this year. Fernando Tatis Jr., nobody wants to touch that guy right now, but the Padres will strike out. They have a 25% strikeout rate against righties since the start of last year. Some of those strikeouts came against this very same pitcher. May had 8 strikeouts over 6 innings against them last week, and it's annoying because it means they're familiar with him. They've seen his stuff, and they got baffled by his stuff at times, but they have seen it. But May also showed he can mow them down with his current repertoire. Overall, this year in 3 starts, Dustin May has a 2.95 skill interactive ERA, a 26% strikeout rate, and a 5% walk rate to go with lots of ground balls. He also has not allowed a ton of hard contact. But as with Gibson, it's hard to expect that strikeout rate to stay where it is because his swinging strike rate is 8.7%. So again, I'm guessing the strikeout rate will come down at some point, but it might not be here because the matchup is so good. There are 2 reasons I prefer Kyle Gibson over Dustin May for tonight. The first one is pitch count. May has not gone longer than 82 pitches in any of his 3 starts so far this year. He's slowly building up. I'd project him around like 90 to 95 tonight, whereas Gibson has not gone shorter than 93 yet. The second reason I prefer Gibson is that, again, this is a repeat matchup for May. He just faced the Padres last week, whereas Gibson has not faced the Mariners yet. So I prefer Gibson at $8,700 over Dustin May at $7,500. I'd probably go both over Corbin once you account for the salary. So I think to me, the ranking for tonight a pitcher is Kyle Gibson 1, Dustin May 2, Patrick Corbin 3, and then there is a big jump down to everyone else. So I think like if you're doing 10 to 15 lineups, I'd stick with those 3 personally. Just go with those 3, rotate through them, get your combinations, and play things that way. Moving on to the stacks for tonight. If the pitching is tough, the stacks are probably easy, and it is easy. We just have to decide where we want to go first. And to me, it's a no-brainer. I want to go to Coors Field. I think both sides here are solid, and they are my number 1 and number 2 stacks for tonight. The preferred side here is the Diamondbacks against John Gray. Gray has been weird because I've stacked against him a couple of times and it hasn't worked out yet. He has a 3.31 ERA so far this year, but the peripherals say we should keep on going back to stacking against Gray. Gray has just a 7.3% swinging strike rate so far. He's allowed a 44% hard hit rate. He hasn't got as many ground balls as last year. He's faced the Giants and the Padres, not great offenses. And again, the Diamondbacks aren't great either, but I'd view them a step above the Giants at least. Maybe not the Padres with how well they've played, but that's why I'm going to put the Diamondbacks number one within this game. I am in on the Rockies too, though. They're facing Robbie Ray. Ray has looked really rough so far. It's happened in tough matchups. He's faced the Astros. He's faced the Dodgers. But for whatever reason, teams are not chasing his pitches outside the zone. His chase rate is down to 22%. That's down from 30% last year. And basically what teams have been doing is they've just kept the bat on the shoulder and let Robbie Ray essentially kind of self-destruct so far this year. So the walk rate is super high. He is, as always, allowing tons of hard contact. He's not getting ground balls. So I think we can stack against Robbie Ray, even with this being a much softer opponent. There are multiple tiers between the Astros and the Dodgers before you get down to the Rockies. But again, we're at Coors Field. Crazy stuff happens. So Ray's strikeout rate is enough for me to put the Diamondbacks number one, but the Rockies will still be number two for tonight. As far as individual batters in this game, Cole Calhoun and Christian Walker, elite values on Arizona. I would love to get Garrett Hampson in there. For the Rockies, if he were to start, he's just $3,000, but the Rockies don't seem as fond of Garrett Hampson as everyone in the fantasy community is. So you can at least get some exposure to this game even when you use Patrick Corbin, but you can go nuts if you use Gibson or May. And I think that's probably my preferred route for tonight. Load up on Coors Field, use one of those lower salaried pitchers, and hope they kind of just don't kill you. Outside of Coors Field, I think that the Rangers are in a really good spot, and they may be the optimal value stack for tonight. They're facing Justin Dunn, and Dunn still trying to get things lined up. He's a super talented guy, had good numbers in the minors, but hasn't translated so far to the majors. In 2 starts this year, a 19% strikeout rate with a 22% walk rate, just a 6.4% swinging strike rate for Justin Dunn. He's allowing lots of hard contact, and he's not getting ground balls. Again, that's not a formula that works in the majors. I would expect him to figure things out eventually because, again, super talented guy in the minors. It will eventually catch up, but it hasn't happened yet. He's faced the Angels in both those starts. Those are tough spots, but I think that Dunn will need to get things reined in pretty quickly to top even the lesser opponents, which the Rangers do qualify as being for tonight. I think the Rangers can do some damage here, and they have some value. Only Joey Gallo and Shin-Soo Choo have salaries above $2,800, and the best value on this slate is Willie Calhoun at $2,400. He's probably going to hit within the top 5 spots. Since the start of last year against righties, a 42% hard hit rate with a 45% fly ball rate, and he strikes out just 15% of the time. We know the bat is there, and he tends to bat pretty high, $2,400. Hard to turn that down. Nick Solak and Rougned Odor, pretty bad to start the year, but I will consider them too. Solak, the preferred option between the two over Odor because Odor's struggles are longer lasting than Solak's. Shin-Soo Choo is, I think, cheaper than he should be at $3,200. Like, he's not a quote-unquote value play because I tend to make that cutoff around $3,000. But Choo at $3,200 is underpriced. So if you want to get to Corbin, I would say the Rangers make that a lot easier, given the guys like Calhoun within this lineup who can give you the flexibility to get up to Corbin. The Rangers are the main value stack for tonight. The overall secondary stack outside of Coors Field is the Houston Astros. They're facing Logan Webb, and Webb has had really good results, but the profile around him says we can stack here. Kind of similar to John Gray, except he doesn't have Coors Field behind him. So it's a good thing for Webb, but still think we can go here. Namely, the thing lacking for Webb is strikeouts. He has an 18% strikeout rate this year with a 9.7% swinging strike rate. The swinging strike rate last year was 8.9%, so it's not as if this is a huge surprise. And it's not just a 3-start sample. It's 11 starts for Webb and hasn't gotten a lot of whiffs so far. In the minors, Webb was a guy who would get ground balls, but that hasn't followed him all that much in the majors yet. It is 47% through 11 starts. That's not bad, but it's also not prohibitive when other things say we can stack against it. That is especially true when he's allowing a 42% hard hit rate at the same time. Webb does have upside. He is still very young. He has pitched well at the lower levels, kind of similar to Justin Dunn, but he's not a high strikeout guy. His batted ball profile is not something that will scare us off. So I think it's good to go at the Astros until Webb gives us a reason not to, especially considering how tough of an assignment this is for Logan Webb for tonight. Now, it's hard to talk about the Astros here at 9 a.m. because I don't really know what the lineup will look like. George Springer's missed a couple of days. Michael Brantley's been sitting pretty often, too, with his injury, so it's hard to project who will hit where. We could see Kyle Tucker at the top of the lineup again. Lots of strikeouts, not great results this year, but he's hitting the ball pretty hard, so you check him out. And I think that what I would say overall with the Astros is just check the lineup once it's out, see if Springer's in there, because that does change quite a bit. But the one constant within the Astros is Yuli Gurriel. Should be batting right in the middle of the order. He's $2,800 against righties since the start of last year, a 41% hard hit rate with a 38% fly ball rate. So check the lineup once it's out. But I think kind of regardless of how things play out from a lineup perspective, I think Gurriel is going to be someone you want to have in your Astros tracks pretty much no matter what. I think I may use Gurriel more often than literally anybody on the planet because his salary never goes up. And I'd assume if people use him as much as I do, his salary would go up. It doesn't. So I'm just going to keep on using him. It might not work, but honestly, who cares? Like he's cheap exposure to the Astros. So I will keep on using Yuli Gurriel, even if I am the only one who is doing so. Things to watch for tonight. I am pretty confused about what's going on with Lance McCullers. Mentioned him before as being this big name. He is at home. He is facing the Giants. It's a thin pitching slate. He's not super expensive, but he just hasn't looked good so far. It's a 17% strikeout rate for McCullers in those 3 starts, a 9.4% swinging strike rate. The velocity is not terrible relative to where it was back in 2018 before the long layoff, but his curveball just doesn't seem to have the same life. Now, such a key piece for McCullers in the past. I think that until McCullers picks things back up, gets that curveball working again, I'm okay missing out in the event that he blows up. So for me, McCullers very much in wait-and-see mode, not stacking against him necessarily, especially now with the Giants in Houston, but not using him yet, even if it does burn me, and he has a great start outside of my rosters. I'm not sure who the Red Sox are starting tonight, but we'll probably want to give the Rays a look as another value outlet. The Red Sox sounds like they will go with an opener. It could be Dylan Covey after that. They've said Covey is going to work as a reliever after he got called up this weekend, but that could also mean he will work after an opener, kind of have like a bullpen-esque type game here. But I would assume it'd be Covey as the long man tonight. Covey really struggled last year. That bode well for the Rays, but even if it's not Covey, an entire game of facing middle relief pitching is a great thing for an offense. So I want to be in on the Rays. I just couldn't put them in the stacks because it's hard to give analysis when we don't know who they are facing. So the Rays, good stack as well, right up there with the Rangers from a value perspective. And it does help with the Rays that Austin Meadows is back from the injured list. The offense really came out the gate pretty sluggish, but Meadows has had about a week to get back in the swing of things, so that could provide a lift to the offense. Ji-Man Choi and Yoshi Tsutsugo could be really solid options in the middle of the order here, so I check out the Rays if you need more value outside of the Rangers and Yuli Gurriel. Outside of that, not really a value stack, but not an expensive one either. I am super interested in the White Sox against Michael Fulmer. Fulmer's making just his second start back after a long layoff. He struggled in his first start back. Lasted just 2 2/3 innings, gave up 4 earned runs, and 3 of those were home runs. The velocity for Fulmer was pretty rough compared to where it was back in 2018. So the White Sox might need to be higher on this list. It's possible I'm putting them too far down, but I think, honestly, you have 6 awesome options within your stacks tonight. Between the 2 Coors teams, between the Rangers, Astros, Rays, and White Sox, there are 6 good options. So just because they are the last team I'm mentioning does not mean they are a team I would not try to get in there. I'm going to try to get them in there because they're really good. Yasmani Grandal, $2,800, probably batting 3rd or 4th. And then, of course, you got the high upside guys in the mid-3,000 range, too. Yoan Moncada, I need to get that MVP bet to pay off. So come on, baby. Let's keep on racking up those extra base hits. He's been awesome so far this year, and I hope he continues to do so tonight. That is all that we have for today. Again, kind of an interesting slate because of the pitching options. It's always a weird slate when Kyle Gibson is your number 1 pitcher. But, hey, we'll see how things play out, and hopefully they go well. back again tomorrow with a full slate as well. But once again, a lot of stuff popping here on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. The Daily ISO for Monday's main MLB or NBA DFS slate is already posted with Tom Vecchio. You can find that on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. The Daily Deke will be back tonight to get you set for Tuesdays. I think it's a 4-game slate for NHL, so make sure you are subscribed to that. Check out Tom's work. Here we have the PGA podcast back tomorrow. Brandon Gadula back from vacation. So we'll get to ride together once again. We have a NASCAR podcast coming this week. So all the good stuff right here in the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. Make sure you are subscribed to that wherever you get your podcasts. Please leave a rating and review as well if you enjoy what you hear. Also, our 4 p.m. show is back up and running over on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook pages. Make sure you are subscribed or following wherever you want to stream there. I will know the lineup for a lot of these teams at that point, so we can go through actual values, discuss any random names who pop up, any changes. If we know the Red Sox starter, go there, ask me questions. Let's talk through this main slate. That is at 4 p.m. Eastern today, YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook. Big thank you to Calvin Theobald, our video producer, running the video side of things here today. Thank you, Cal, as always. If you have any questions for me, I am on Twitter at JimSannes, JimSannes. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Thank you all for tuning in for today. Hope you all had a fantastic weekend. Good luck tonight. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. This has been the solo shot right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.